Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a text that literally challenges the entire foundation of how we measure success, power, and even our own identities. We're going to unpack some wild paradoxes found in the gospel, ideas that just completely flip our everyday human logic right on its head. It's a journey that goes from these massive, sweeping theological concepts right down into the super intimate fears of our own egos. Okay, let's dive into this. There's this phrase that sounds kind of simple on the surface, but it actually holds this massive abyss within it. Death is the ultimate democracy. Now, that's not because death makes every single story exactly the same, or because it somehow erases the unique value of a person. No, it's because when we're confronted with this completely unavoidable reality, every single human hierarchy we spend our entire lives building, it just collapses. Section 1. The Ultimate Equalizer. Breaking down the illusions of hierarchy. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at how this ultimate equalizer actually operates. It introduces this fundamental concept that the divine operates on a logic that is basically the exact opposite of our standard human ambition. Think about it. The rich and the poor, the ultra-powerful and the completely unknown, the winner and the defeated, they all eventually hit the exact same boundary. And at this final frontier, our earthly credentials, they mean absolutely nothing. No title you've ever earned, no money in the bank, no influence or carefully curated reputation can negotiate with it. It's the great equalizer that just strips away all those illusions we work so incredibly hard to maintain. Section 2. Inverting the ruler. Human logic versus divine logic. And this brilliantly illustrates the core paradox here. The gospel completely inverts the ruler we use to measure success. Just look at the stark contrast. We humans, we're always thinking in terms of ascension, right? Climbing the ladder. But Christ speaks of descent. We're constantly obsessing over acquiring power. He talks about service. We want victory and winning at all costs. He deliberately walks right toward the cross. We tend to think the first should comfortably stay way up there above the last. But he says no, the last can become first. It is just a total, radical clash of paradigms. You know, we naturally assume greatness means standing head and shoulders above someone else, looking down from this position of superiority. But divine logic, it redefines greatness as placing a child right in the middle of the room. We think justice is simply getting exactly what we deserve. And then, grace appears, offering us the very thing we could literally never earn or buy. This inverted ruler just completely redefines everything we think we know about justice and greatness. Section 3. The Identity Paradox. The fear of losing ourselves. So, if this divine logic is so beautiful, why on earth do we resist it so much? Well, it's because we're absolutely terrified of letting our egos die. When faced with the idea that our need for dominance has to end, our ego basically panics and screams this exact question. If I let this die, who will I be? Just pause for a second. Let the emotional weight of that panic really sink in. It is a deeply terrifying thought to let go of the very armor you've used to survive your whole life. But here is perhaps one of the most profound answers in the entire gospel. Christ's response isn't some threat of non-existence. He doesn't say, well, you'll just cease to exist. Instead, the response is, now you can discover who you really are. It's an invitation. It's this profound call to drop the fake persona, that identity we've patched together out of old wounds and defenses, so that our true self can finally actually breathe. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this metaphor of holding sand and how perfectly it describes our identities. We spend so much of our time trying to preserve a very specific image of ourselves, and we end up imprisoned by it. We want to protect our character, defend our importance, save our reputation, the whole shebang. But trying to save that image is exactly like holding sand in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it just slips right through your fingers. In our desperate attempt to not lose who we think we are, we destroy the possibility of becoming who we actually could be. Section 4. The True Meaning of Power. Redefining Authority and Defeat. When we finally let go of that sand, it triggers this radical shift in how we view authority. Human power almost always asks one very specific question. How many people can I make obey? It measures strength by subjugation. But Christ's logic asks, how many people can I serve? This is exactly why you see that stunning imagery of the master washing the disciples' feet. He, the one who actually had the right to demand service, takes on the posture of the servant. True authority isn't some instrument for supremacy. It's a profound responsibility to serve others. And this redefinition of power is exactly why the cross is so incredibly baffling to our human logic. Looked at from the outside, it looks like the ultimate defeat, right? The political power won, the institutional religion won, the violence won. The man is humiliated, killed, and his followers completely scatter. Yet, the bold claim here is that what looked like the absolute defeat of God was actually the definitive revelation of God's character. God's victory rarely ever looks like winning while it's actively happening. So the crucial point is that we have to be incredibly careful with how we interpret our own lives. We constantly confuse visibility with presence. We confuse success with truth, power with authority, and loss with straight-up failure. We look at our suffering and just assume it means abandonment. But the appearance of God's absence in our deepest struggles is not actual proof of his absence. Just because you can't see the victory doesn't mean the story's over. Which brings us to the ultimate, just staggering paradox. We humans expect to find God by climbing up, right? By ascending to the absolute highest peak. But instead, God appears by descending. The Creator intimately enters his own creation. The eternal literally steps right into time. The momentum of this inversion is absolute. The Word becomes flesh. The king willingly becomes a servant. The judge actually allows himself to be judged. The innocent is condemned, and the rejected becomes the cornerstone. Christ doesn't just sit on a hill somewhere and teach a new philosophy or a new way to think. He physically, entirely embodies a completely new way to exist. It's a type of greatness that manifests itself through total surrender. Section 5. Die before you die. The ultimate invitation to live.
Let's move to and see how this builds, pivoting our focus from grand theology straight into some highly personal introspection. If death is the ultimate democracy, the message here is, don't wait for physical death to teach you what it inevitably will. Look at this heavy baggage of the ego we carry around every single day. To truly live, these things must die before you die physically. You gotta let go of the need to dominate everyone around you. You have to let die that desperate need to be admired, the need to control absolutely everything, the need to destroy anyone who threatens your image or makes you feel small. That version of you that needs others to be small so you can feel big, that has to go.
But if you let those things die, you might just discover something truly extraordinary. You'll find that you don't actually need to be above anyone just to exist. You can serve without being inferior. You can genuinely love without possessing. You can abandon the ego without abandoning your true identity. In fact, abandoning the ego is literally the only way to actually find your identity. You lose what you imagined yourself to be, only to find who you really are. And so this explainer leaves us with a question that we all have to answer for ourselves. The gospel isn't just asking us to believe in someone who beat death, it's asking us something much more uncomfortable, something deeply personal. What if the true, vibrant life that's being offered to you begins exactly at the moment you finally stop protecting the parts of yourself that need to die? Thank you so much for exploring these powerful paradoxes with me. Take some time to really reflect on what you're holding on to, and I'll see you next time.